My son came home from school shaking. Not crying, shaking. He held up a picture of a little boy and said, "Mama, why does he look exactly like me?" I laughed. Then I saw the photo, and I stopped breathing, because that little boy was supposed to be dead. Stay with me through this whole video, because the twist at the end will change how you see everything that came before it. And if this story hits you the way I think it will, share it, because someone out there needs to hear this. I want you to picture a Tuesday morning in Atlanta. Nothing special about it. The kind of morning where the sky can't decide if it wants to be gray or blue, and you're already running 4 minutes late, but you're pretending you're not. That was my life. My regular, beautiful, exhausting life. My name is Renee. I'm a school nurse. I was 34 years old, raising my 7-year-old son Caleb by myself in a 2-bedroom apartment that had one busted window blind and the best-smelling kitchen on the whole floor. We were not rich. We were not struggling either. We were just us, and us was enough. Caleb was the kind of child that made strangers stop and smile without even knowing why. He was quiet in that deep way, where you could tell his mind was always working 3 steps ahead of his mouth. He loved to draw. Every single surface in that apartment had a drawing on it somewhere. The back of mail envelopes, the margins of my grocery lists, even once on the bathroom wall, which we do not talk about. He had these big, steady eyes that missed absolutely nothing. And he looked just like me. Everyone always said so. Same nose, same forehead, same little gap between his 2 front teeth. His father, Darnell, had been gone since Caleb was 2. No calls, no cards, no nothing. I had made peace with that. Or at least I had built something strong enough to look like peace. It was just the 2 of us, and we had our routine, and our routine was solid. Drop Caleb off at Wright Oaks Elementary by 7:50, wave at the door, drive to work. Spend the day patching up scraped knees and checking fevers and being the calm person in every small storm. Come home, cook, listen to Caleb tell me something wildly specific about whatever animal he'd been researching that week. Tuck him in, do it all again. That Tuesday felt exactly like every other Tuesday. I dropped him off, I waved, his teacher, Miss Lorraine, held the door open. I noticed she looked at Caleb a second longer than usual, but I didn't hold on to that thought. I had a full day ahead of me and a thermos of coffee that was already going cold. I didn't know that by nightfall, my whole understanding of my son's life, and mine, was going to shift underneath me like the floor had just decided it was done being a floor. He was quiet at dinner. And I don't mean regular quiet. I mean the kind of quiet that has weight to it. The kind where you ask your child how his day was, and he says fine, but the word lands wrong, too flat, too careful. I watched him push his rice around his plate, and I asked him 2 more times, each time softer than the last, because I knew pressure wasn't going to open him up. Caleb always came to things on his own schedule. Then he reached into his backpack and put something on the table between us. I thought it was one of his drawings. It wasn't. It was a printed photograph. The kind they take for school projects, a little grainy, printed on regular copy paper. It showed a group of kids standing in front of a painted wall, and in the middle of that group was a little boy who stopped my heart cold. Same nose, same forehead, same gap between his 2 front teeth, same eyes. Not similar eyes, not eyes that kind of reminded me of Caleb, the same eyes. I picked the paper up and brought it closer, like maybe the distance was lying to me. It wasn't. I made myself laugh because Caleb was watching my face. I told him it was probably just a coincidence, that sometimes people just look alike, that the world is full of people who could be strangers and look related. I said all the things a mother says when she's trying to protect her child from her own panic. Then Caleb looked up at me and said, quietly and completely seriously, "His name is Tobias. He's in the other 2nd grade class. He came up to me today and asked me why I have his face, Mama." I kept my face calm. I kept my voice even. I told him that was a funny thing to say, and we'd figure it out. I cleared the dishes. I put him to bed. I read him 2 chapters of his book and kissed his forehead and turned off the light. Then I sat in my kitchen alone and stared at that photograph until 2 in the morning. I went to school early the next day. As the school nurse, I had access to the student database. Nothing invasive, just the basic records I needed for health screenings and emergency contacts. I told myself I was just looking, just settling my own nerves so I could move on. I searched the name Tobias. 1 result. Tobias Wayne, 7 years old, 2nd grade. Emergency contact, Claudette Wayne, grandmother.
no parents listed. I sat with that for a moment. Then I opened his school photo on the screen, and I had to close my eyes because the feeling that moved through my body was something I had never felt before and do not have a clean word for. It was like looking at Caleb. It was exactly like looking at my son.
I positioned myself in the main hallway that afternoon during the recess changeover. I told myself I just needed to see him in person, and then I would know it was nothing. That photos lie, that screens distort, that I was a tired woman who needed sleep and not a mystery. Tobias came around the corner with his class, and I saw him before he saw me, and I want to tell you that in that moment, every sensible, rational thought I had just folded up and sat down. He walked like Caleb. He held his head like Caleb. He had a small drawing sticking out of his jacket pocket. And then he looked up, and across the hallway he saw Caleb, and both of them stopped walking at the exact same time. Not because anyone told them to, just stopped. And they stared at each other in complete silence while the hallway moved and noise happened all around them. A teacher had to gently nudge Tobias along. Caleb turned and looked at me, and I smiled like everything was fine. It was not fine. That night, I called Claudette Wayne. I introduced myself as the school nurse, said I was following up on a routine wellness matter. She was warm, gracious, the kind of woman who makes you feel welcomed even over the phone. We talked around things for a few minutes, and then right before we hung up, she paused and said, "How old are you, baby?" Just like that, casual and soft. I told her I was 34, and she went quiet for just a beat too long before she said goodnight. We met at a diner 2 days later. I recognized her the moment she walked in. Silver locks, slow, steady walk, eyes that were warm and tired at the same time. The kind of eyes that have been carrying something heavy for so long, they've just learned to carry it quietly. We ordered coffee. We talked about the boys, about the school, about Atlanta traffic. And then I put both photos on the table between us, Caleb and Tobias side by side. She looked at them for a long time. She didn't look surprised. She looked relieved in the saddest way I've ever seen relief look on a person. Then she said, "I was wondering when this day would come." Her son's name was Reginald. She described him without flinching: handsome, troubled, someone who moved through life sideways, in and out of trouble, in and out of people's lives. He had been involved with a woman named Tara years ago, and Tara had been pregnant with twins. But at the birth, the family was told one of the babies didn't survive, complications. The surviving baby came home. The other was buried, or so they were told. Claudette said she never felt right about it, said a grandmother knows. But Reginald was gone by then, and she had no power and no proof and a baby to raise. So she raised Tobias, and she carried the doubt alone. I sat across from her, and I felt the ground shift. Because as she talked, I was doing the math. I was going back. I was thinking about the hospital where I delivered Caleb, Grayfield Memorial, a small county hospital that had closed down 3 years after Caleb was born. I was thinking about the word they used, complications. I was thinking about how I was 27 and alone and scared, and how nobody sat down and explained everything clearly to me. I was thinking about how I had assumed, without ever really examining the assumption, that Darnell was Caleb's father. But I had been with Reginald Wayne before Darnell, briefly, quietly, a chapter I closed quickly and didn't revisit. The math was doing itself without my permission, and I didn't like where it was landing. I requested my birth records from the county. Grayfield had been closed, everything transferred. It took 3 weeks and 4 phone calls, and one moment where I almost let it go. A records clerk named Denise slipped me something extra with my file, a scanned intake form from the night I delivered. I almost didn't look at it closely. Then I did. 2 heartbeats listed, and then 1 crossed out. But when I held the page up to the light, the ink on the crossout was different, darker, added later. I drove to South Carolina on a Thursday morning without telling anyone where I was going. Dr. Harlan Boone was 74 years old and living in a house that was too large and too nice for a retired county doctor. He opened the door and looked at my face and tried to close it again. I put my hand on the door. I wasn't angry in a loud way. I was angry in the way that has already decided it's not leaving until it gets what it came for. I told him I didn't want money. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to know why. He let me in, and he told me. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Tara. It was a practice. Quiet, deliberate, spanning years. Single black mothers, low income, overwhelmed, often alone in that delivery room. Twins would come, and one would disappear into paperwork, into private brokers, into families who paid and asked no questions. He said he told himself it was giving children better opportunities. He said it like it was a thought he'd rehearsed, like he'd been arguing with himself about it for 20 years and still hadn't won. I looked at this man in his comfortable chair, in his comfortable house, and I thought about Caleb drawing alone on a Saturday morning, not knowing he had a brother 3 miles away. I thought about Tobias growing up without knowing why he sometimes felt like half of something. I thought about Claudette carrying a grief that was never even real. Her grandson was alive the whole time. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up and I left. I went home and I walked into Caleb's room and he was drawing, like always. I sat on the edge of his bed and I took a breath and I told him the truth, in the simplest, most honest words I could find. I told him that sometimes the world makes mistakes and keeps them secret, and that we had found one of those secrets. I told him that Tobias was not just a boy who looked like him. I told him Tobias was his brother, his real brother, for real and for always. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Does he know yet?" I told him he was about to. The following Saturday, Claudette brought Tobias to the park near our apartment. I held Caleb's hand on the walk over, and he didn't pull away, which he usually does because he's 7 and too cool for hand-holding. When the boys saw each other, they didn't hug, they didn't cry, they didn't make it dramatic the way adults would have. They just looked at each other for one long second, and then Tobias said, "You want to see something?" and pulled a drawing from his pocket, and Caleb's whole face opened up. They ran off together like they'd been doing it their whole lives, because in every way that mattered, they had. Claudette sat beside me on that bench, and after a while she reached over and took my hand without saying a single word. We just sat there and watched our boys. I filed a formal complaint. I found a civil rights attorney who didn't flinch when I laid out the documents. We found 3 other mothers, 3 other families with the same hospital, the same doctor, the same darker ink on their paperwork. Dr. Boone's quiet retirement got a lot less quiet. I don't know yet how it ends legally. These things move slow, and the world doesn't always give you the clean ending you deserve. But my son has his brother. They draw together on Saturday mornings now. They argue over whose drawing is better. Caleb still wins, but Tobias is catching up. I didn't get the justice I wanted. Not yet. But I got something I didn't even know I was missing. The knowledge that my son was never incomplete. He was just waiting. If you stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Stories like this one are not fiction. They are rooted in real history, real hospitals, real mothers who were told to grieve things that were stolen from them. Share this video, leave me a comment, and tell me what hit you hardest. And tonight, no matter what, hold your people close. I'll see you in the next one.